Here's the most honest question you can ask yourself today. Look at what you actually worked on yesterday, not what you intended, not what you told yourself you'd do, but what you actually gave your attention to. Would it explain the life you have right now? That's the real audit, not your goals, not your vision board. Your life is being built by what you work on every single day, because most people aren't failing from a lack of intelligence, opportunity, or effort. They're failing because what they work on every day doesn't build the life they say they want. Attention is compounding. What you feed grows. What you neglect weakens. What you avoid quietly takes control. If you say you want strength, but work on comfort daily, comfort will own you. If you say you want wealth, but work daily on consumption, consumption will shape your future. If you say you want peace, but work daily on reaction and impulse, chaos becomes your baseline. This is where most people stop. They treat life like loose sand, hoping random effort produces an intentional life. It can't. 10 things, that's all. 10 things successful people work on every single day, not when inspired, not when convenient, every day, because they understand what daily compounding produces over months and years. Once you understand it too, you'll never approach your day the same way again. Chapter 1. Work on your mindset before the day claims it. If you lose the first part of your day, you usually lose the shape of the rest of it. Most people wake into surrender. They do not call it that, but that is what it is. Their hand reaches for the phone before their feet touch the floor. Messages, news, deadlines, other people's moods, other people's priorities. By the time breakfast is over, their nervous system is already working for someone else. They wonder why their day feels hijacked by 10 in the morning. The answer is simple. It was claimed before they ever arrived in it. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most modern professionals do, and he was carrying an empire on his back. His private writings, later collected as meditations, were not written for applause. They were written as mental preparation. He did not assume wisdom would be there waiting for him when pressure arrived. He rebuilt it daily. That is the first lesson. Your mindset is not a mood, it is a construction. The truth is, you do not rise to the level of your intentions in the morning. You fall to the level of your mental environment. I learnt this the hard way. At 35, when I was still wearing expensive suits and calling myself successful, I used to wake up and check email before I had even fully opened my eyes. I told myself it was discipline. It was not. It was dependency dressed as professionalism. Before 8 in the morning, I had already handed my mind to urgency. By noon, I was solving problems I never should have inherited. By evening, I was too mentally fragmented to think clearly about my own life. Not theory, lived experience. This is where most people stop. They think mindset means staying positive. It does not. A strong mindset is not a smile. It is not a mood board. It is not repeating a sentence in the mirror while your habits remain weak. Mindset is the structure that decides what gets access to your mind before the world starts negotiating with it. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer built influential research around what he called implementation intentions. The basic truth was simple. People act more consistently when they decide in advance what they will do, when they will do it, and under what conditions. That matters here because mindset is rarely protected by vague desire. It is protected by pre-decision. If your plan is to do something intentional in the morning, you will lose. If your plan is that, at 6:30, I sit in the chair by the window and read 3 pages before I touch the phone, you have a structure. Structure beats mood. The counterintuitive insight is this. Your morning does not need more stimulation. It needs less. Most people think they need a burst of information to become effective. The opposite is usually true. They need silence long enough to hear their own standards again. Successful people do not all use the same method, but they all protect the same principle. They engage their own mind before the world does. That could be 3 pages from Epictetus. That could be a notebook where you write, "Today I will be patient under pressure. Today I will not let urgency outrank importance." That could be 10 quiet breaths and 1 written priority. The method matters less than the order. Your mind first, the world second. Here is a simple framework. I call it anchor, aim, act. Anchor. Spend the first few minutes becoming difficult to disturb. No phone, no input, no digital noise. Aim. Decide who you are going to be before deciding what you are going to do. Calm, precise, unavailable to nonsense, honest. Act. Choose the first meaningful action of the day before reactive work begins. That is mindset in practice, not philosophy as decoration, philosophy as operating system. James Clear popularized many useful habit ideas, but the older Stoics understood the same mechanism long before productivity culture found language for it. Repetition forms identity. If every morning begins in noise, your identity becomes reactive. If every morning begins in intention, your identity becomes self-directed. The truth is, you cannot win a day that starts with psychological trespassing. You cannot build a disciplined life on a borrowed mental state. You cannot expect clarity from a mind you train into immediate reaction. Try this for 7 days. Before any message, any headline, any request, do one thing that strengthens your thinking. Read, write, sit in silence. Ask one hard question. What kind of person does today require me to be? Then answer it with behavior. By day 1, you will feel resistance. By day 3, you will see how addicted your mind is to interruption. By day 7, you will notice something that matters. The first decision of your day will feel cleaner. The first irritation will have less power. The first demand will not immediately own your attention. That is not magic. That is mental territory reclaimed. Mindset work is not soft work. It is border control. It decides what enters and what does not. It determines whether your day is built from principle or invaded by pressure. And once your mind stops begging the day for direction, you become capable of something harder than good intentions. You become capable of consistent action when your feelings are nowhere to be found. Chapter 2. Work on your discipline before your motivation arrives. Most people are waiting for a feeling that was never supposed to lead their life. They wake up and ask the wrong question. Do I feel like doing it today? That single question has ruined more careers, more health goals, more financial plans, and more promises to self than open failure ever did. Because at least open failure tells the truth. This quiet dependence on motivation lies to you. It tells you action should feel natural before it begins. It tells you the mood should arrive first. It rarely does. Jocko Willink built an entire public identity around a hard, plain idea. Discipline equals freedom. People repeat that phrase because it sounds strong. Very few live it because it requires pre-committed action. The point is not that discipline feels good. The point is that it removes negotiation from moments where your weaker self always wants a vote. The truth is, motivation is weather. Discipline is architecture. This is where most people stop. They build their schedule like a wish. They say they want to train in the morning, save money, read more, produce more, create more, but they leave the decision open at the exact moment temptation becomes strongest. Then they are shocked when the easier option wins. That is not a character flaw. That is poor design. Peter Gulwitz's work matters here again. When people form specific if-then plans, follow-through improves because the moment of action no longer depends on fresh internal debate. If it is 6 in the morning, I put my feet on the floor. If it is 8 at night, I prepare tomorrow's first task. If it is payday, a fixed percentage moves automatically into savings. You are not hoping to be disciplined. You are installing a response. I have seen this destroy people, brilliant people, capable people. People who could solve complex problems in a boardroom and still could not keep a simple promise to themselves for 7 consecutive days, not because they were weak, because they had trained themselves to treat every commitment as optional if discomfort was present. That pattern does not stay in one area. It spreads. It moves from the gym to the bank account, from the bank account to marriage, from marriage to self-respect. Discipline starts when the excuse would be legitimate, and you act anyway. Discipline starts when the mood is absent, and the standard remains. Discipline starts when your word to yourself becomes more important than your comfort. There is another piece of psychology worth understanding. Many people still talk about self-control as if it is a battery that simply runs out. Baumeister's early work on ego depletion influenced that view, but subsequent debate and criticism made one thing clear. Human action is not well explained by a simple empty tank model. Meaning, structure, expectation, and context matter. In plain language, people often do not fail because they ran out of some invisible substance called willpower. They fail because they left too much room for argument. That should give you relief. It means you do not need to become superhuman. You need to become less negotiable. Here is the framework. Decide, reduce, repeat, decide. Choose 3 actions your future depends on, not 10. 3. The actions that, if repeated daily, would visibly change your life in a year. Reduce, shrink the startup friction. Lay out the shoes at night. Prepare the page. Schedule the call. Automate the transfer. Remove choices that make you weak. Repeat. Let evidence replace emotion. Every completed action becomes proof that you are not waiting to feel ready. The counterintuitive truth is that discipline often feels worse at the beginning, precisely because it is working. It is exposing how often your life has been run by convenience. You are not becoming less free by removing options. You are becoming less available to sabotage. Consider military training, elite athletics, or even world-class music practice. The common thread is not emotional enthusiasm, it is standard. Kobe Bryant did not become Kobe Bryant because he loved every practice. He became who he was because the practice happened whether emotion showed up or not. Love of the craft matters, but love without schedule is still fragile. For the next 7 days, choose one discipline commitment that affects your identity. Wake at a fixed time, walk every morning, write 500 words, track every expense, read 20 minutes before bed instead of scrolling. Then do not evaluate the week by asking whether you enjoyed it. Ask whether the commitment produced something that would not exist without it. That question is stronger than motivation. It forces truth, because motivation is cheap. It asks nothing and promises everything. Discipline is expensive. It asks for action first and pays later. But when it pays in evidence, and evidence changes a person. Once you have proof that you can act without permission from your feelings, you stop being easy to derail. That is the real shift. You stop living in reaction to your mood and start living as a system organized around chosen standards. Then something strange happens. The work you used to wait to feel inspired to do becomes normal. Not exciting, not cinematic, just normal. And once action becomes normal, you can turn it toward something even more powerful than consistency. You can turn it toward mastery. Chapter 3. Work on your primary skill until it becomes your competitive advantage. Discipline without direction produces effort. Skill turns effort into leverage. That is why so many hard-working people remain replaceable. They are reliable, they are busy, they show up. But the market does not reward effort equally. It rewards useful excellence. It rewards the person whose core capability has been sharpened past ordinary competence into something difficult to ignore. Kobe Bryant became a symbol of obsession for a reason. Teammates spoke about his early morning training as if it belonged to another species of seriousness. The stories mattered because they revealed a principle. He did not practice only what already made him dangerous. He worked on footwork, mechanics, angles, and precision until small edges became visible separation. That is what most people refuse to do. They maintain their skill. They do not deliberately extend it. The truth is, competence earns permission to stay in the room. Mastery changes your terms inside it. This is where most people stop. They mistake repetition for improvement. They do the same version of the same task for years and call it experience. Time alone does not create advantage. Deliberate stress on the weak edge of your ability does. Researcher Anders Ericsson spent years studying expert performance and deliberate practice. The useful takeaway is not academic. It is brutal and practical. Improvement comes faster when practice targets a specific weakness with full attention and immediate correction. Not when you casually repeat what already feels comfortable. Comfort maintains, friction develops. You need to identify your primary skill, not your title, not your job description, your actual value engine. It may be sales, writing, coding, negotiation, strategy, design, leadership, analysis, storytelling, decision-making under pressure. Whatever your future depends on most, that is the skill that deserves daily pressure. Then ask a harder question. Which part of that skill currently collapses first under stress? Maybe you are good at long-form thinking, but weak in concise communication. Maybe you can generate ideas, but struggle to structure them. Maybe you are strong one-to-one, but poor in rooms. Maybe your technical work is good, but slow. Most people do not improve because they protect their ego from this question. The truth is, your strongest career asset often grows fastest when you stop admiring it and start dissecting it. I watched this play out in corporate life for years. Two executives can work the same hours and hold the same title. One gets quietly bypassed, the other becomes indispensable. The difference is usually not effort, it is targeted refinement. One keeps proving current competence, the other keeps raising functional value. There is an economic principle beneath this. Scarcity drives price. If your primary skill is common, the market has options. If your version of that skill becomes unusually clear, fast, persuasive, accurate, or trusted, you become harder to replace. That does not just improve income. It improves negotiating power, optionality, resilience, and authority. Work on your best skill, not because it is your comfort zone, but because it is your leverage point. Do not spread your ambition evenly across everything. Concentrated strength creates disproportionate returns. Here is the framework. Define, diagnose, drill. Define. State your primary skill in plain language. Diagnose. Name the weakest dimension that limits its ceiling. Drill. Spend 15 to 20 focused minutes daily attacking that dimension only. If your skill is writing, drill openings, clarity, rhythm, or editing. If your skill is sales, drill objection handling, listening, or closing questions. If your skill is leadership, drill feedback conversations, meeting clarity, or calm decisions under conflict. Measure quality of focus, not just time. Did you actually challenge the weak point, or did you hide inside familiar performance? That distinction matters more than hours. You should also understand something uncomfortable. The thing that made you successful can become the thing that traps you. Early praise creates complacency. You become identified with being naturally good. Then you stop taking the awkward reps that could make you exceptional. This is why gifted people sometimes plateau earlier than ordinary people, with stronger discipline. The gifted protect reputation. The disciplined protect growth. The counterintuitive insight is that daily improvement on one narrow skill can matter more than broad self-improvement across 10 areas. General growth feels noble. Targeted skill expansion pays. Warren Buffett became extraordinary, in part because he developed not just knowledge, but judgment in capital allocation. Lincoln became unforgettable because he refined the ability to express moral complexity with precision. Great operators in any field are rarely balanced as casual observers imagine. They are often intensely sharpened around one or two rare capabilities. For the next 30 days, track one thing. Did you do real practice on your primary skill, yes or no? Do not write essays about it. Do not turn it into a performance. Just tell the truth. At the end of the month, compare a current example of your work to day one. If there is no clear improvement, your practice was too soft. That is not failure. That is feedback. The truth is, talent becomes visible early. Mastery becomes visible late. Most people want recognition during the phase when they should be invisible and drilling. Most people want status when they should want repetition. Most people want the return while avoiding the concentration that creates it. If you stay with it, the market begins to feel different. Rooms that used to intimidate you become readable. Problems that used to drain you become solvable. The work that used to feel heavy becomes elegant. That is when a skill stops being something you have and starts being something that carries you. But even mastery lives inside a body, and if that body is neglected, your thinking, your discipline, and your advantage begin to rot from underneath you. Chapter 4. Work on your body as the foundation of every other daily practice. You cannot build a sharp life on a dull physical system. That sentence offends modern vanity because people want the mind to be exempt. They want intellect, ambition, and talent to somehow float above biology. It does not work that way. Your thinking happens inside tissue. Your focus depends on energy. Your patience depends on recovery. Your emotional control depends more on sleep, movement, and nourishment than most people are willing to admit. Matthew Walker's work on sleep made one thing brutally clear to a culture addicted to pretending otherwise. Sleep loss harms memory, judgment, mood regulation, learning, and reaction time. In plain language, the tired version of you is not just low energy, it is lower quality. Yet people keep treating sleep deprivation like a badge of importance. The truth is, exhaustion is not ambition, it is impairment with branding. I have seen senior leaders pride themselves on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, then spend entire afternoons making sloppy decisions, misreading tone, escalating minor problems, and calling it pressure management. No, it was just a tired brain making expensive choices. This is where most people stop. They think body maintenance is separate from meaningful work. It is not. It is upstream from meaningful work. If your body is neglected, every other strength is taxed. Your learning becomes slower, your impulses become louder, your focus fractures faster, your communication gets harsher or vaguer. Your patience collapses. Then you blame life when the truth is your physical foundation has been underfunded. Here is the practical problem. People know sleep, movement, and hydration matter. Knowledge is not the issue, structure is. That is why you need a physical minimum, not an ideal fantasy plan, a minimum standard that happens whether the day is clean or not. Choose the highest leverage weak point. For many people, it is sleep. For others, it is movement. For others, it is food quality or water intake. But pick one first. Make it automatic. If sleep is broken, define a fixed wind-down time and guard it. If movement is absent, commit to a daily walk or strength circuit that is too simple to debate. If hydration is poor, create visible triggers and measurable targets. Your body does not need your admiration, it needs your consistency. Physical discipline is not aesthetics, it is capacity. Health is not a side hobby, it is production infrastructure. There is another behavioral truth here. Habits attached to identity last longer than habits attached to guilt. If you tell yourself, I should really take better care of myself, nothing changes. If you tell yourself, I do not ask my brain to perform from a neglected body, that creates a standard. Same action, different identity, different durability. A study from Stanford and other institutions would not be necessary for any honest adult to know this, but the evidence is still useful. Movement consistently improves mood, attention, and cognition, not because exercise is magic, because the human system is built to function through use, not stasis. You do not need to become an athlete. You need to stop living like an object. The counterintuitive insight is that the smallest physical habits often produce the biggest stability returns. People seek advanced routines while overlooking basic fundamentals. A consistent bedtime can improve your leadership more than another business book. A daily walk can improve your emotional control more than another speech about resilience. Here is the framework. Restore, move, fuel, restore. Protect sleep with the seriousness you give deadlines. Move, get your body active every day, even if the session is brief. Fuel, hydrate and eat in a way that does not sabotage the next 4 hours of thinking. Track it for 1 week. Hours slept, minutes moved, water consumed. Then alongside that, note energy, focus, and emotional steadiness. Your own data will tell the truth better than any lecture. Patterns become visible fast. The day after poor sleep, patience drops. The day after inactivity, mental drag rises. The day after sloppy eating, clarity suffers. That is not weakness, that is physiology. And once you stop acting surprised by it, you can stop acting victimized by it. Take care of the machine that carries your standards. Train the body because the mind depends on it. Respect recovery because discipline without recovery becomes stupidity. This is where high performers separate themselves from performers who burn bright and then disappear. Sustainable excellence is not just hard effort, it is recovered effort. It is output built on a body that can keep showing up without collapse. You do not need perfect health to begin. You need honesty. If your body is under-maintained, every other ambition is paying interest on that neglect. Correct it, quietly, consistently, daily, because once your body can actually support the weight of your standards, you become capable of doing what weak systems never sustain for long. You become capable of learning fast enough to stay ahead. Chapter 5. Work on learning something genuinely useful every day. The world does not care how informed you feel. It rewards what you can understand, apply, and use. That is a hard truth for a generation drowning in content and starving for framework. People consume hours of clips, summaries, headlines, opinions, and half-digested ideas, then wonder why their decisions are still ordinary. Because information is not learning, exposure is not understanding, and familiarity is not capability. Warren Buffett has long been associated with a habit that sounds absurd to impatient people. He spends much of his working life reading and thinking. Charlie Munger did the same, not because reading is a personality trait, because accumulated understanding compounds into judgment. Better judgment compounds into better decisions. Better decisions compound into wealth, resilience, and range. The truth is, the person learning every day is competing with tomorrow. The person who stopped learning is competing with memory. This is where most people stop. They confuse entertainment with education. They mistake inspiration for acquisition. They listen to a podcast, nod at 3 smart sentences, and tell themselves they are growing. But if the idea cannot survive in your own words and alter your own behavior, it did not become yours. It passed through you like background noise. You need daily learning tied to a practical aim, your primary skill, your financial literacy, your leadership, your health, your communication, your craft, not random curiosity alone. Curiosity is useful. directed learning is profitable. Economics gives you a simple lens here. Human capital matters. The more valuable your skills and judgment become, the more leverage you create across decades. That leverage does not appear in a dramatic breakthrough. It accumulates quietly through daily study that looks unimpressive in the moment. 25 minutes today, one page of notes, one clarified model, one new distinction. That is how edge is built. James March, Herbert Simon, Daniel Kahneman, Charlie Munger. Different traditions, same warning. Human decision-making is limited, biased, and often lazy, unless it is trained. That means daily learning is not just a growth strategy, it is a correction strategy. It helps you notice where your instinct is underinformed, where your mental models are thin, and where your confidence has outrun your competence. I learnt this the hard way too. When I left corporate life, I had enough status to look informed and enough fatigue to stop thinking clearly. That is a dangerous combination. Titles can make you feel current long after your mind has gone stale. I had to rebuild the habit of learning without applause, reading with a pen, writing what changed my view, studying money beyond salary, studying people beyond management slogans, not theory, lived experience. Here is the framework. Learn, distill, apply. Learn, spend 20 to 30 minutes with something that stretches your thinking in a useful direction. Distill. Write one sentence in plain language about the most valuable idea. Apply. Write one sentence about where it changes behavior in your actual life. That last step is where most people stop. Application is the border between knowledge and identity. You should also rotate learning intensity. Some days read deeply, some days review and connect. Some days study one narrow issue until it becomes clear. The goal is not constant novelty. The goal is usable understanding. The counterintuitive insight is that rereading great material often outperforms chasing new material. A person who deeply understands 10 foundational books, reports or frameworks can often outthink the person who skims 100. Buffett was not successful because he read randomly. He read purposefully and repeatedly within domains that affected judgment. If you are listening to this and thinking, "I do not have time," then tell the truth. You do have time. You are already spending it somewhere. The issue is not time. It is allocation. Most people can find 20 minutes. They simply leak it into distraction and call the leak inevitable. Keep a learning log for 1 month. Do not make it beautiful. Make it honest. One insight, one application. Then, at the end of the month, review it. Patterns appear. Certain ideas return. Certain weaknesses become obvious. Certain blind spots start closing. That is how a sharper internal framework develops. Quietly, daily, without spectacle. Learning should make your choices cleaner. Learning should reduce expensive mistakes. Learning should increase your range, not just your vocabulary, because the real point is not to sound informed. It is to become less easy to fool, less easy to intimidate, less easy to manipulate, less easy to replace. And when learning starts changing the quality of your decisions, it exposes another rare capability that turns ordinary hours into extraordinary output. That capability is focus. Chapter 6. Work on your focus as the rarest skill in the modern world. Most people do not have a time problem, they have an attention problem. They sit in front of the work for 8 hours and still do not touch the thing that would actually move their life forward. Not because the day was impossible, because their attention was broken into fragments so small that no serious thought could survive inside it. Notification, reply, switch, check, interrupt, scroll, reset, repeat. Then they call it a busy day. Sophie Leroy's research on attention residue put language to what serious people already sensed. When you switch from one task to another, part of your attention often stays stuck on the first task. That means constant switching is not free. It leaves mental debris. So by the time you finally arrive at important work, you are present in body and divided in mind. The truth is, distraction is not harmless. It is cognitive theft. This is where most people stop. They try to improve focus with tricks while protecting the environment that destroys it. You cannot build deep attention in a day designed around interruption. You cannot expect intensity from a brain trained to expect novelty every few minutes. Focus is not declared, it is trained. Successful people protect blocks of undivided attention because they understand something most workers still miss. The most valuable tasks cannot be done well in fragments. Writing, strategic thinking, problem solving, designing, studying, planning, building, real conversations. These require immersion, not just presence, immersion. Cal Newport popularized the phrase deep work, but the principle is older than the phrase. Every meaningful field rewards people who can stay with complexity longer than others can tolerate. That is why focus is becoming rarer and more profitable at the same time. Modern life weakens it, the market rewards it. That is a brutal opportunity for anyone willing to train it. Start with one block, 25 minutes if your mind is weak, 45 if it is recovering, 90 if it is already trained. During that block, one task, one priority, no inbox, no messages, no open tabs pretending to help. If another thought appears, capture it and return. The point is not perfect stillness, the point is repeated return. The practical framework is simple. Select, seal, sustain. Select the one task that deserves your best cognition. Seal the environment, silence devices, close inputs, protect the door. Sustain attention until the block ends, even when discomfort arrives. That discomfort matters. Most people misread it. They think the restless urge to switch means focus is failing. Often it means focus is beginning. You are feeling the withdrawal from constant stimulation. Stay there. That is where concentration gets built. The counterintuitive insight is that productivity often rises when availability falls. If you are constantly reachable, your mind never settles deeply enough to produce high-value work. People fear being unavailable because they think it looks irresponsible. In many cases, being constantly available is the very thing making their output mediocre. I used to measure my usefulness by responsiveness, fast replies, immediate answers, quick approvals. It looked efficient from the outside. It was expensive from the inside. My days felt full, and my real work stayed untouched until late evening, when my best thinking was already gone. The shift happened when I stopped treating accessibility as virtue and started treating protected attention as duty. You should identify the 2 or 3 tasks in your life that produce long-term value and demand focus, not errands, not maintenance, value. Then place them before reactive work claims your mind. If you do your best thinking after the inbox, you are giving your future leftovers. Focus is a force multiplier. Attention is an asset class. What you protect grows sharper. You do not need perfect silence to begin. You need standards. One protected block, every day. Extend it by 5 minutes each week. Over time, you will notice that your relationship with work changes. You become less frantic, less scattered, less vulnerable to digital provocation. You start finishing things that used to sit half-done for weeks. And the economic return is real. In a distracted market, concentrated output becomes unusually visible. The person who can produce clear work from ordinary time becomes disproportionately valuable. Protecting focus also reveals something else. Many distractions are not external, they are emotional. People check, switch, and scroll because stillness forces them to meet discomfort. That matters because every serious life eventually runs into one uncomfortable subject that cannot be outsourced. Money is one of them. Chapter 7. Work on your finances with daily intentional attention. Most financial decline does not begin with catastrophe. It begins with drift, a purchase here, a subscription there, a little avoidance, a little confusion, a little emotional spending after a difficult day, a little delay on learning what should have been learned years ago. Then months pass, years pass, income rises, but anxiety stays. The person keeps telling themselves they need a bigger break, when what they often need first is better daily attention. The Federal Reserve has repeatedly reported that many adults struggle with even modest emergency expenses. That should humble anyone still treating money as a monthly glance rather than a daily responsibility. The issue is rarely just income. It is attention, structure, literacy, and behavior. The truth is, wealth is often less about dramatic moves and more about repeated small decisions that either leak or preserve power. This is where most people stop. They act as if finances are too stressful to examine closely, so they look away until the situation becomes stressful enough to force attention. That cycle is expensive. Avoidance charges interest. Behavioral economics gives you a harsh explanation. Kahneman and Tversky showed how loss aversion shapes human behavior. People feel losses more intensely than equivalent gains. In ordinary life, that means many people avoid looking at bad numbers because the discomfort feels like loss, even when the real loss is being created by avoidance itself. They postpone budgeting, ignore statements, delay investing, and keep spending in ways that preserve present emotional comfort while eroding future security. You need to reverse that pattern by making money ordinary, not dramatic, ordinary. A 5-minute daily financial practice does more than a 3-hour panic session once a month, because repetition lowers emotional charge and raises clarity. Here is the framework. Review, redirect, reinforce. Review one thing each day: spending, savings rate, investment contribution, upcoming obligations. One concept you need to understand better. Redirect one behavior structurally. Remove the stored card. Increase the automatic transfer. Cancel the waste. Limit the frictionless leak. Reinforce the identity. You are not a person who hopes money works out. You are a person who notices. The counterintuitive insight is that high income can delay financial maturity. When money is flowing, sloppiness hides longer. People confuse earnings with strength. They are not the same. I have seen executives making more than they ever imagined, yet still living with quiet financial fragility because their attention never matured with their salary. Bigger numbers simply made the leaks harder to notice. Wealth begins when money stops being a source of emotion and becomes a subject of discipline. Budgeting is not restriction, it is command. Saving is not fear, it is options purchased in advance. Investment is not fantasy, it is delayed consumption converted into future strength. Review your last 30 days of spending. Find the 3 categories where your money ignored your stated priorities. Then build structure, not speeches. Automatic transfers beat good intentions. Fewer payment conveniences beat daily restraint. A default investment contribution beats waiting for the perfect month. You should also study one financial principle at a time: compound interest, tax drag, index funds, debt interest, opportunity cost, inflation, emergency reserves. Do not try to sound sophisticated. Try to become functionally dangerous to your own bad habits. This is where wealth starts to feel less mystical. The emotional fog begins to lift. You stop seeing money as a verdict on your worth and start seeing it as a system of flows that can be shaped. That shift matters because shame makes people passive. Clarity makes them active. I have seen this destroy people, not just bankruptcy. Much quieter destruction, marriages strained by secrecy, talented people trapped in jobs they hate because they have no margin, parents carrying constant fear because income disappears as fast as it arrives. Money neglected daily becomes freedom denied later. Give it 5 minutes a day. That is enough to change the relationship. Small attention, repeated honestly, becomes control. Control becomes options. Options become dignity. And once you stop leaking financial power, you begin to notice another multiplier that affects every room you walk into, every opportunity you touch, and every standard you try to defend. That multiplier is communication. Chapter 8. Work on your communication to multiply your impact. Talent that cannot travel through language stays trapped. You can have intelligence, integrity, vision, and useful ideas, and still lose influence if you cannot communicate them with clarity and weight. That is not fair. It is simply true. In professional life, personal life, negotiation, leadership, friendship, money, conflict, and trust, communication is the channel. If the channel is weak, the value gets distorted as it passes through. Abraham Lincoln is remembered for many things, but the Gettysburg Address remains one of the clearest examples of concentrated communication power. Roughly 272 words, a few minutes. Yet the speech carried moral force and structural clarity strong enough to outlive armies and administrations. That kind of communication was not accidental. It was built through years of reading, thinking, speaking, and refining. The truth is, most people do not have an ideas problem. They have a transmission problem. This is where most people stop. They say, "I am just not a natural communicator." That is usually an excuse designed to protect them from deliberate practice. Communication is a skill cluster: clarity, listening, timing, tone, structure, precision, warmth, persuasion, restraint. Any of these can be trained. You need to identify your weakest communication dimension, not the one you are embarrassed by in theory, the one that costs you in practice. Maybe your emails are long and unclear. Maybe you speak well one-to-one, but lose coherence in groups. Maybe you talk too much when nervous. Maybe you do not listen deeply enough to understand the actual concern under the words. Maybe you sound sharp when you mean to sound clean. Then practice that dimension daily. Here is the framework: clarify, compress, connect, clarify. Know the point before you open your mouth. Compress. Say it in fewer words than your anxiety wants. Connect. Deliver it in a way the other person can actually receive. That third step matters because precision without humanity creates distance. Warmth without structure creates fog. Great communication carries both. Psychological research on active listening has repeatedly shown that people feel safer, more trusting, and more cooperative when they sense genuine understanding. That should matter to you, because influence is rarely achieved through force alone. People are moved when they feel both seen and guided. If your listening is weak, your communication is weak, even if your speaking is polished. The counterintuitive insight is that stronger communication often begins with speaking less, not more. Many people try to sound impressive by adding language. Strong communicators remove language until only what matters remains. Lincoln did not become immortal by exhausting the room. He became memorable by disciplining the message. Practice one clear message a day, one concise email, one honest conversation where your only job is to understand before replying. One presentation opening, spoken aloud until it lands clean. One paragraph rewritten to half its original length without losing meaning. This is not glamorous work. It is the work that quietly raises your impact in every domain. I used to think being senior meant speaking more. It does not. In many rooms, seniority is revealed by who can say the essential thing with calm precision and then stop. Rambling is often just insecurity with extra vocabulary. I learned that after too many meetings where people used words to hide their uncertainty instead of sharpening their contribution. Communication multiplies trust. Trust multiplies opportunity. Opportunity multiplies the return on every other skill you have. Ask one person you trust for one specific piece of feedback this week. When I explain something, do I land the point cleanly? When I write, is it immediately clear what I need? When I listen, do you feel understood? One honest answer can correct months of blind repetition. Because poor communication rarely feels poor from the inside. That is why feedback matters. The person who learns to communicate clearly becomes harder to ignore. The person who learns to listen deeply becomes harder to deceive. The person who can combine both becomes dangerous in the best way. And once you understand how much influence travels through words, you begin to see something even more powerful. The people in your life are not separate from your future. They are part of the structure that shapes it. Chapter 9. Work on your relationships with the same intentionality you give your goals. Some of the most expensive losses in life do not arrive as headlines. They arrive as neglected names, a mentor you stopped updating, a friend you only contact when things fall apart, a former colleague you respected but never invested in, a family member you assumed would always understand your silence, a spouse who got your leftovers while your ambitions got your best attention. Relationships rarely collapse in one dramatic moment. They erode through neglect, disguised as busyness. The Harvard study of adult development, which has followed lives across decades, has pointed toward a conclusion people keep trying to outsmart. Good relationships are deeply tied to health, well-being, and resilience, not superficial networking, not public popularity, real trusted connection. Yet many ambitious people still invest in goals with precision and treat relationships with improvisation. The truth is, your network is not just a career asset, it is part of your emotional, informational, and practical survival system. This is where most people stop. They wait until they need help to remember who matters. That teaches others something dangerous. It teaches them that your presence arrives with demand attached. Strong relationships are built before need, not during it. You should identify the 10 to 15 relationships that most affect the quality of your life and work. Not because people are tools, but because reality is relational. Opportunities move through people. Warnings move through people. Encouragement moves through people. Truth moves through people. If your key relationships are under-maintained, important things stop reaching you in time. Here is the framework. Notice, reach, add. Notice who matters and who has gone quiet. Reach out directly, not lazily. Add value before asking for anything. That value can be simple, a thoughtful note, a relevant article with one precise reason it made you think of them, appreciation with detail, a useful connection, a question about something important in their world. The point is personal signal, not social noise. The counterintuitive insight is that relationships become stronger when contact is regular and modest, not rare and grand. People think they need a perfect reason to reconnect. They do not. They need sincerity and consistency. A short, true message sent at the right time often matters more than a long speech sent too late. I have seen this destroy people in a quieter way than money ever did. High performers who built impressive careers and then looked around at 45 and realized no one really knew them. No one trusted them deeply. No one they had invested in would tell them the hard truth when they needed it. Their network was large and thin. Their life was efficient and lonely. That is not success. That is structural failure, wearing expensive clothes. You should also pay attention to reciprocity. Healthy relationships are not accounting systems, but they are not one-way drains either. If you are always taking, the system weakens. If you are always giving while ignoring your own needs, resentment builds. Intentionality means balance, clarity, and timing. Think in decades, not in days. Invest before crisis, not during it. Offer value without immediate return, as the condition. That is how trust compounds. Relationships also regulate your standards. If the people around you normalize excuses, drift, gossip, and avoidance, those habits spread. If the people around you embody honesty, discipline, calm, and ambition, those standards spread too. Human beings imitate more than they admit. Daily relational attention is partly about care and partly about environment design. Reach out to 3 people this week you have neglected for more than 60 days. Ask nothing. Offer something real. Pay attention to how uncomfortable it feels. That discomfort is not a stop sign. It is proof that you have allowed initiative to weaken. The truth is, nearly every life-changing opportunity arrives through a human channel, and nearly every human channel requires maintenance before the moment of need. When you begin treating relationships as living assets rather than background scenery, your life gains depth, support, and range. But even then, there is one final question that decides whether all this effort compounds into meaning or merely into efficiency. What is all of it for? Chapter 10. Work on your purpose, so every other daily practice has direction. A disciplined life without direction can still become a wasted life. That is a sentence ambitious people do not enjoy hearing, because many of them have built identity around motion. Wake early, train hard, work clean, learn daily, save money, focus deeply, communicate well, build relationships. All of that matters, but if none of it is pointed towards something that genuinely matters to you, then what you have built is a high-performance machine with no chosen destination. Viktor Frankl saw something in the worst conditions a human being can witness. In concentration camps, where nearly every external source of dignity and control had been stripped away, he observed that people with a reason to endure often held on differently. His work later became the foundation of logotherapy, the idea that meaning is central to human life. You do not need to turn that into poetry. You need to let it sober you. Purpose is not decoration. It is direction under pressure. The truth is, purpose is not a luxury for reflective people. It is a stabilizer for serious people. This is where most people stop. They think purpose must arrive as a grand revelation. It usually does not. More often it becomes visible through honest elimination. What kind of work leaves you emptier even when it pays well? What contribution still matters to you when applause is removed? What kind of life feels respectable from the outside but dead from the inside? Those questions reveal direction. I learnt this the hard way. Burnout did not come to me because I was weak. It came because I had become highly efficient at serving goals that were no longer mine. I was organized, effective, well compensated, trusted, and quietly disconnected from any reason that made the effort worth the cost. That is a terrifying place to be, because from the outside, nothing looks wrong. Inside, everything is thinning out. That is when I understood something painful. You can build a system strong enough to carry you deep into the wrong life. Purpose is what prevents discipline from becoming sterile. Purpose is what keeps success from becoming imitation. Purpose is what makes sacrifice intelligible. You do not need a slogan. You need one honest sentence. The reason my daily work matters is that it contributes to this. A child, a body of work, a level of freedom. Service to people you care about. A standard you refuse to betray. A message that must be said. A life of integrity that does not collapse under private scrutiny. Keep it honest. Keep it plain. Here is the framework. Name, align, audit. Name what your life is for. In one sentence you can say without pretending. Align your daily practices so they actually serve that sentence. Audit each evening by asking whether today moved you closer or farther from it. That final daily audit matters because purpose drifts without it. Urgent tasks multiply. Praise distorts. Fear narrows the field. Before long, you are busy again, and direction is assumed rather than examined. Do not let that happen. The counterintuitive insight is that purpose often becomes clearer after subtraction, not expansion. Stop adding identities. Stop collecting goals that belong to other people's expectations. Stop saying yes to every path that flatters your ego. Clarity is often hidden beneath excess. Purpose should make choices cleaner. Purpose should make trade-offs easier. Purpose should make discipline worth the pain it costs. You are not here just to become more efficient at reacting. You are not here to become a polished machine for other people's urgency. You are not here to die with a well-managed calendar and a poorly examined life. At the end of each day, ask the question most people avoid. Did what I worked on today move me toward something that actually matters? If the answer is no for too many days in a row, do not comfort yourself with productivity. Correct direction, because all 10 of these daily practices are powerful. Mindset, discipline, skill, body, learning, focus, finances, communication, relationships, purpose. Together they can rebuild a life, but only purpose decides whether that rebuilt life belongs to you. And that is the final truth. The 10 things you work on every day become the architecture of your future. But the meaning behind them decides whether that future feels like freedom or merely another well-defended cage. Your life is not built in breakthroughs, it is built in repetition. What you repeat becomes what you trust. What you trust becomes what you defend. What you defend becomes who you are. Most people do not need another idea. They need a stricter relationship with the ideas they already know. The truth is, the gap between your stated values and your daily habits is the measure of your internal conflict. You feel unstable when your days keep voting against your standards. You feel weak when your behavior keeps disproving your words. You feel scattered when your attention belongs to everything except what matters. Clarity is not found in more noise. Clarity is recovered in removal. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-respect in visible form. Silence is not empty. Silence is where your real priorities become audible again. A strong morning is not a performance. It is an act of possession. If your mind belongs to the world before it belongs to you, the day was compromised early. If your actions wait for motivation, your future will keep waiting too. If your best skill is not being sharpened, it is being overtaken. If your body is neglected, your ambition is borrowing against a failing system. If you are not learning, your confidence is aging faster than your competence. If you cannot focus, you will spend your life near important work, and rarely inside it. If you ignore money, money will quietly reduce your options. If you communicate poorly, your value will keep arriving damaged. If you neglect relationships, do not act surprised when life feels unsupported. If your purpose is unclear, even disciplined days can become empty. This is where most people stop. They admire truth in private and avoid it in practice. They want a different life without a different pattern. They want peace while rehearsing chaos. They want strength while feeding weakness. They want freedom while serving impulse. You do not become dangerous by feeling powerful. You become dangerous by becoming consistent. You become trustworthy to yourself by keeping ordinary promises. You become calm by reducing what controls you. You become focused by refusing fragmentation. You become financially stronger by respecting small decisions. You become harder to shake when your inner life has structure. A day is never just a day. It is a vote. A habit is never just a habit. It is a direction. A choice is never just a choice. It is an argument for the kind of life you are willing to build. The truth is, your future is already under construction. It is being shaped by what you do when no audience is present. It is being shaped by the first hour of your morning. It is being shaped by the excuses you tolerate. It is being shaped by the standards you keep when comfort offers a deal. I learnt this the hard way. You can win publicly and still be collapsing privately. You can look disciplined and still be disorganized at the level that matters. You can be praised for a life that does not fit your soul. That is why daily work matters. Daily work reveals allegiance. Daily work reveals design. Daily work reveals whether your life is being led or drifted. Do not measure your days by how full they felt. Measure them by what they strengthened. Do not measure yourself by what you intended. Measure yourself by what you repeated. Do not call chaos ambition. Do not call avoidance rest. Do not call distraction modern life and then pretend you had no choice. You always have a choice, not an easy one, not always a clean one, but a real one. A better life is rarely built through dramatic reinvention. It is usually built through quiet refusal. Refusal to react first. Refusal to negotiate with weakness. Refusal to let comfort become commander. Refusal to keep funding what destroys you. Refusal to keep calling drift a phase. The 10 things you work on every day become the shape of your character. Then your character becomes the shape of your future. And your future, in the end, is not an event. It is the accumulated result of what you were willing to do repeatedly when nobody forced you. That is the standard. That is the cost. That is the freedom. That is the truth.